You are doing everything in your power to stay healthy. You read the magazines, you listen to your general practitioner, and you understand that physical movement is the absolute key to longevity. You decide that walking around the neighborhood is no longer enough. You want to build strength, you want to protect your bone density. So you join a local gym, or perhaps you buy some heavy exercise equipment for your garage. You load up the weights, you grip the handles, you take a massive deep breath, and you push with all the strength your body can muster. In that exact fraction of a second, your face turns bright red, your neck veins bulge, and the pressure inside your chest absolutely skyrockets. You feel a sudden sharp tightness behind your sternum. The room begins to spin, your vision tunnels, and before you can even release the weight, your cardiovascular system suffers a catastrophic, life-altering failure. You were simply trying to get stronger, but instead, you triggered a massive medical emergency. This is a scenario that plays out in fitness centers and home gyms across the world every single day. We constantly tell adults over the age of 60 to exercise, but we almost never tell them exactly how dangerous certain specific types of exertion can be for an aging heart. Today, we are going to expose the hidden, terrifying cardiovascular dangers of popular exercises. I'm going to reveal the specific movements and breathing mistakes that turn a healthy workout into a deadly pressure trap for your blood vessels. We are going to look under the skin, at the microscopic plaques inside your arteries, to understand exactly why a sudden strain can cause an artery to rupture or a fatal blood clot to form. We will explore the mechanics of your chest cavity, the dangerous reflexes of your nervous system, and precisely what you must never do if you want to protect your heart while staying active. Before we dive into the heavy science of exercise physiology, I must pause and provide you with my standard, critically important medical disclaimer. This video is intended strictly for educational purposes. I am a doctor, but I am not your personal doctor. The biomechanics and cardiovascular events we are about to discuss are based on extensive, peer-reviewed medical literature, but every single human body is uniquely different. Do not ever use the information in this presentation as an excuse to avoid all exercise, and certainly do not change your prescribed medications or your rehabilitation programs based on a video you watched on the internet. Exercise is medicine, but like any medicine, the dosage and the method of delivery must be correct. Use the knowledge I'm sharing with you today to educate yourself, to understand the profound mechanical forces at play inside your body, and to become a powerful advocate for your own safety. Then, take this knowledge directly to your primary care physician or your cardiologist and have an informed conversation about the safest way to structure your specific fitness routine. To understand why a simple exercise can cause a heart attack, we first have to understand the fragile, aging infrastructure of your cardiovascular system. When you are 20 years old, your arteries are like fresh, brand new rubber bands. They are incredibly flexible. If your blood pressure suddenly spikes, these rubber bands simply stretch wide open to accommodate the extra force, and then they snap right back to their original size without sustaining any damage whatsoever. Your heart muscle is thick, resilient, and perfectly capable of handling sudden bursts of extreme adrenaline. But as we cross the threshold into our 50s, 60s, and 70s, that infrastructure fundamentally changes. Years of minor inflammation, fluctuating blood sugar, and the natural aging process cause those rubber band arteries to become stiff. They lose their elasticity. Furthermore, almost every adult over the age of 60 has some degree of atherosclerosis. This is the silent, gradual buildup of cholesterol plaque inside the inner lining of the blood vessels. This plaque is not always a solid blockage. Often, it is a soft, fatty deposit covered by a very thin, fragile, fibrous cap. Your arteries are no longer flexible rubber hoses. They are stiff, somewhat narrowed pipes lined with delicate, vulnerable structures. When you engage in cardiovascular exercise like brisk walking or swimming, your heart rate gradually increases. Your blood vessels naturally dilate, opening wider to deliver more oxygen to your working muscles. This is a beautiful, healthy process. The pressure in your system rises slightly, but it is a smooth, continuous, and highly manageable increase. The danger arises when you engage in exercises that cause violently sudden, extreme spikes in blood pressure. If you subject a stiff, plaque-lined artery to a sudden, explosive surge of pressure, the artery cannot stretch to absorb the blow. Instead, that fragile, fibrous cap covering the cholesterol plaque can literally snap. It tears open. When a plaque ruptures inside your coronary artery, your body perceives it as a massive internal injury. Platelets instantly rush to the site of the tear and form a massive blood clot in a matter of seconds. That clot completely blocks the artery, shutting off the oxygen supply to your heart muscle. This is a myocardial infarction, a massive heart attack. It was not caused by eating a heavy meal. It was caused by mechanical shear stress, the sheer physical force of high-pressure blood tearing the inside of your blood vessel. The first and absolutely most dangerous exercise mistake you can make after the age of 60 is an incredibly common breathing reflex known as the Valsalva maneuver. You might not know the medical name, but you have almost certainly done it. The Valsalva maneuver is the act of taking a deep breath, closing your glottis, which is the vocal cords in your throat, and bearing down forcefully, attempting to exhale against a closed airway. It is the exact same physical action you use when you are straining to move a heavy piece of furniture, trying to open a hopelessly stuck jar, or pushing during a difficult bowel movement. In the gym, seniors do this constantly. They sit on the leg press machine, they load it up with heavy weight, they take a massive gulp of air, they hold their breath, and they push the weight with their legs while straining their abdominal muscles. While this breath-holding technique does stabilize your spine and core, it creates a terrifying, life-threatening environment for your heart. Let me explain the exact sequence of the Valsalva pressure trap. When you take that deep breath and bear down, the physical pressure inside your chest cavity, your intrathoracic pressure, absolutely explodes. Your chest essentially becomes a highly pressurized balloon. This massive internal pressure physically crushes down on the superior and inferior vena cava. These are the two massive primary veins responsible for bringing all the dark, deoxygenated blood from your body back to the right side of your heart. Because these veins are being crushed by the pressure in your chest, the blood flow returning to your heart is suddenly violently choked off. Your heart is still beating, but it is suddenly pumping empty. It has no blood to push forward. Your blood pressure momentarily drops, and your brain senses a lack of oxygen, which is why you often feel dizzy or see spots when you strain like this. Your nervous system immediately panics. It detects the dropping blood pressure and triggers a massive instantaneous release of adrenaline and noradrenaline. It forcefully constricts every blood vessel in your body and orders your heart to beat faster and harder to keep you from passing out. And then the trap springs. You finish the repetition, you release the weight, and you finally exhale. The massive pressure inside your chest cavity instantly vanishes. The crushed veins pop wide open. All of that blood that was backed up in your body comes rushing into your heart like a tidal wave. Your heart, which is already beating furiously under the influence of massive adrenaline, suddenly has a massive volume of blood to pump. It forcefully ejects this tidal wave of blood into a network of arteries that are still tightly constricted from the adrenaline response. The resulting spike in blood pressure is nothing short of astronomical. A major physiological study published in the Journal of Applied Physiology measured the blood pressure of individuals performing heavy lifts while utilizing the Valsalva maneuver. The researchers recorded systolic blood pressure spikes exceeding 300 millimeters of mercury. To put that into perspective, a normal, healthy, resting systolic blood pressure is 120. A hypertensive crisis, an emergency requiring immediate medical intervention, is 180. During a heavy breath-holding lift, your blood pressure can surge to nearly triple the normal, safe limit in a fraction of a second. If you are a 65-year-old adult with stiff arteries, a history of mild hypertension, or an undiagnosed cholesterol plaque in your left anterior descending artery, a pressure spike of 300 is a catastrophic event. That is the exact shear stress required to rip a plaque wide open, trigger a massive clot, and cause a fatal heart attack before you even have time to rack the weights. I want to share the story of a patient named Michael. Michael was 68, a retired police officer who was determined to stay strong. He went to the gym 3 days a week. His blood pressure was managed with a daily dose of an ACE inhibitor, but he still ran a little high. One afternoon, Michael decided to see how much weight he could lift on the chest press machine. He loaded up the stack, gripped the handles, took a massive breath, held it tightly in his throat, and strained with every ounce of power he had. His face turned deep crimson. As he locked out the weight, he finally exhaled. In that exact moment, Michael felt what he later described as a thunderclap inside his chest. A tearing, agonizing pain radiated down his left arm and up into his jaw. He collapsed on the gym floor, completely unable to catch his breath. The massive rebound spike in his blood pressure, caused entirely by the Valsalva maneuver, had ruptured a vulnerable plaque in his coronary artery. He suffered a severe myocardial infarction right there in the weight room. Thankfully, the gym staff acted quickly with an automated external defibrillator, and paramedics rushed him to our cardiovascular wing. We placed a stent in his artery and saved his life, but Michael's heart muscle sustained permanent damage. He did not have a heart attack because he was out of shape. He had a heart attack because he held his breath under extreme resistance. This brings me to a crucial rule for senior fitness. If you are lifting weights, using resistance bands, or doing any form of strength training, you must never, ever hold your breath. You must learn the continuous breathing protocol. You inhale on the easy part of the movement, and you forcefully, continuously exhale through your mouth on the hard part of the movement. If you are pushing a weight away from you, you should be blowing air out of your lungs the entire time. This continuous exhaling prevents the pressure in your chest cavity from spiking, keeps the blood flowing smoothly back to your heart, and eliminates the deadly adrenaline rebound effect. If a weight is so heavy that you are physically forced to hold your breath to move it, that weight is entirely too heavy for your cardiovascular system. Drop the weight, increase the repetitions, and keep breathing. The second highly dangerous category of exercise for seniors involves movements where you do not move at all. These are called isometric exercises. In the fitness world, they have become incredibly popular for building core strength and joint stability. The most common examples are the plank, where you hold your body in a rigid push-up position resting on your forearms, and the wall sit, where you slide your back down a wall until your knees are bent at a 90-degree angle, and you hold that agonizing position for as long as possible. On the surface, isometric exercises seem incredibly safe for seniors. You are not jumping around, you are not lifting heavy metal over your head, and there is no impact on your joints. It looks like a calm, controlled exertion. But from a cardiovascular perspective, sustained isometric holds are a terrifying form of torture for an aging heart. To understand why, we have to look at the anatomy of your muscles and your blood vessels. When you perform a dynamic exercise like walking, cycling, or doing a simple bicep curl, your muscles rhythmically contract and relax. This rhythmic squeezing actually helps your heart. When the muscle contracts, it pushes blood through the veins. When the muscle relaxes, it allows fresh, oxygen-rich blood to flow into the tissue from the arteries. It is a harmonious, pumping cycle. But during an isometric exercise like a wall sit, the massive muscles in your thighs, your quadriceps, contract with immense force, and they stay contracted. They do not relax. They remain locked in a state of maximum tension for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, or even 2 minutes. This sustained, relentless muscle contraction physically crushes the blood vessels running through your legs. The arteries bringing fresh blood down to your legs are clamped completely shut by the hardened muscle tissue. Your heart continues to pump, trying desperately to deliver oxygen to those burning, working leg muscles. But the heart is pumping against a brick wall. The peripheral resistance in your lower body becomes impossibly high. Because the blood has nowhere to go, the pressure inside your entire arterial system rapidly and dangerously elevates. A landmark paper published in the American Heart Association Journal of Hypertension documented this specific physiological response. The researchers observed that sustained isometric contractions produce a dramatic, prolonged elevation in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure. Unlike dynamic exercise, where the blood vessels dilate to handle the flow, isometric exercise physically strangles the blood vessels, forcing the heart to strain against a clamped-off system. Imagine taking a garden hose, turning the water pressure all the way up, and then aggressively kinking the hose in the middle. The pressure behind the kink builds to an explosive level, straining the rubber to its absolute breaking point. That is exactly what you are doing to your cardiovascular system when you hold a deep wall sit or a rigid plank for a minute straight. For a senior who already has stiffened arteries or underlying hypertension, this sustained pressure is incredibly hazardous. It places immense, unbroken stress on the left ventricle of the heart, the main pumping chamber. Over time, frequently subjecting the heart to this kind of strain can lead to left ventricular hypertrophy, which is an unnatural, dangerous thickening of the heart muscle walls. More immediately, the sustained high pressure can cause microscopic tears in the inner lining of the blood vessels known as the endothelium. This endothelial damage is the very first step in the formation of new cholesterol plaques. I had a patient named Susan, a 72-year-old retired school teacher who took up a popular home workout program. The program emphasized extreme core stability and required her to hold a plank position for 2 full minutes. Susan was determined and tough, and she practiced every day until she could hold the pose. But every time she did, she felt a throbbing, pounding sensation in her ears and a deep, uncomfortable pressure in her jaw. She mentioned this to me during a routine checkup. I asked her to demonstrate the plank right there in my exam room, and I placed a blood pressure cuff on her arm. After 60 seconds of holding the rigid, motionless posture, her blood pressure had climbed from a very healthy 115/70 all the way up to 185/100. Her face was flushed and she was clearly straining. I told her to drop to her knees immediately. Susan was inadvertently creating a hypertensive crisis in her living room every single morning. The sustained isometric contraction of her core and leg muscles was physically blocking the blood flow, forcing her heart to pump against a massive internal barricade. We modified her routine to include dynamic core exercises, like gentle crunches and seated twists, where the muscles could contract and relax rhythmically. Her ear throbbing and jaw pressure completely vanished. If you are over 60, I strongly advise replacing extreme isometric holds with dynamic movements. Instead of a static wall sit, do slow, controlled, shallow squats, where you are continuously moving up and down. Instead of a 2-minute plank, perform modified, rhythmic core exercises that allow your blood to flow freely and your arteries to breathe. I am not telling you to stop all exercise. Discuss this with your doctor, but understand that motionless straining is an enemy to a fragile vascular system. Now, we must transition to an activity that combines every single dangerous physiological mechanism we have discussed into one terrifying, often fatal event. It is not an exercise you do in a gym. It is a chore you do in your driveway. I am talking about shoveling snow. In the cardiology community, heavy snow shoveling is widely known as the Widowmaker workout. When you wake up to a heavy snowfall, your body is usually still in a resting state. You put on a heavy coat, you grab a shovel, and you walk out into the freezing cold air. The cold temperature is the very first trigger. When freezing air hits your face and your skin, your body immediately activates a survival mechanism. It forcefully constricts the blood vessels in your skin and your extremities to keep your warm blood tightly packed around your vital internal organs. This widespread vasoconstriction immediately raises your baseline blood pressure and forces your heart to pump harder, just to circulate blood through the narrowed pipes. Then you begin to shovel. Shoveling wet, heavy snow is an incredibly demanding form of physical labor. It requires the sudden, explosive use of your legs, your core, your back, and your arms. But unlike running on a treadmill, where your heart rate ramps up slowly, snow shoveling forces your heart rate to spike from 0 to maximum capacity in a matter of seconds. Your heart demands a massive, sudden supply of oxygen to fuel this intense exertion. But remember, you are in the freezing cold. Your arteries are tightly constricted. Furthermore, snow shoveling naturally encourages the exact breathing mistake we discussed earlier. You dig the shovel into the heavy snow, you take a deep breath, you hold your breath, and you heave the snow over your shoulder. You are repeatedly performing the Valsalva maneuver, causing massive spikes in intrathoracic pressure. At the exact same time, you are gripping the handle of the shovel incredibly tightly, and you are holding your body tense as you lift. You are incorporating intense isometric contractions of your arms and core, which further clamps down on your peripheral arteries. So, let us look at the complete terrifying picture. You have a massive demand for oxygen because of the heavy labor. You have severely constricted arteries due to the freezing cold. You have violent fluctuating blood pressure spikes because you are holding your breath to lift the snow. And you have high peripheral resistance because of the tight isometric gripping of the shovel. Your heart is being starved of oxygen while being forced to pump against astronomical pressure in a freezing environment. A devastating study published in the journal Clinical Research in Cardiology analyzed hospital admissions during the winter months. The researchers found a massive, undeniable spike in severe myocardial infarctions, heart attacks, in the hours immediately following heavy snowfalls. The vast majority of these patients were men over the age of 55 who were otherwise completely sedentary, but decided to aggressively shovel their driveways. The intense, unaccustomed mechanical stress literally tore their coronary plaques open. I want to tell you about Arthur. Arthur was 66, overweight, and taking a daily statin for high cholesterol. On a Tuesday morning in January, a foot of heavy, wet snow fell on his neighborhood. Arthur wanted to get his car out to go to the grocery store. He grabbed his shovel and attacked the driveway with intense vigor, wanting to get the job done quickly so he could get back inside to the warmth. He was panting. He was holding his breath on every heavy scoop, and he was sweating profusely under his heavy coat. Halfway down the driveway, Arthur felt a sensation like an elephant stepping directly onto his chest. He dropped the shovel, fell to his knees in the snow, and began vomiting from the intense, agonizing pain. His neighbor saw him and called the paramedics. Arthur suffered a massive blockage in his left anterior descending artery. The combination of the cold air, the breath holding, and the sudden explosive lifting had ruptured a cholesterol plaque that had been quietly sitting in his artery for a decade. He survived, but his recovery took months, and he lost a significant portion of his cardiac function. If you are over 60, and particularly if you have a history of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or a sedentary lifestyle, you must never shovel heavy snow. It is simply not worth your life. Hire a neighborhood teenager, buy a snowblower that requires very little physical pushing, or simply wait for the sun to melt it. If you absolutely must clear a small path, you must treat it like a serious athletic event. You must warm up inside the house for 10 minutes first. You must push the snow rather than lifting it. You must take small, manageable scoops. You must breathe continuously, exhaling forcefully every time you move the snow. And you must stop immediately if you feel even the slightest twinge of chest pressure, jaw pain, or unusual shortness of breath. Finally, we must discuss the danger of the 0 to 60 trap. This involves high-intensity interval training, or HIIT, without a proper warm-up. Many seniors read that short bursts of intense exercise are great for burning fat and improving cardiovascular fitness. They get on a stationary bike, pedal slowly for 30 seconds, and then suddenly sprint with absolute maximum effort for a minute, completely ignoring the necessary biological ramp-up phase. Your heart cannot go from a resting state to maximum output in 3 seconds without sustaining damage. Your blood vessels require time to recognize the demand for oxygen and release a chemical called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the miracle molecule that causes your arteries to smoothly and safely dilate. But it takes 5 to 10 minutes of gradual increasing exertion for your body to produce enough nitric oxide to fully open the vascular pathways. If you launch into an explosive sprint without warming up, your heart furiously pumps massive amounts of blood into arteries that are still relatively narrow and stiff. The blood hits the narrowed pipes, causing extreme friction and shear stress along the inner walls of the vessels. This sudden, violent friction can dislodge stable plaques or trigger acute arrhythmias in an unprepared heart. You must always respect the warm-up. Give your blood vessels the time they need to open the doors before you push the engine to its limit. I know that all of this physiological detail can sound intimidating. You might be worried that any wrong move will cause a catastrophe. But I want to assure you that exercise is incredibly safe and absolutely vital if you follow a few simple, non-negotiable rules. I have created a specific protocol to keep your heart protected while you build strength and stamina. I call this the Heart-Safe Exercise Checklist. These are 4 mandatory steps you must take every time you engage in physical exertion. Step 1. The talk test. This is the simplest and most effective way to monitor your cardiovascular stress. Whether you are lifting light weights, walking on a treadmill, or gardening, you must always be able to speak a full sentence comfortably without gasping for air. If you are grunting, if your face is turning red, and if you cannot say the words, "I am breathing comfortably right now," you have crossed the line into dangerous territory. Your blood pressure is spiking, and your heart is straining. Back off the intensity immediately until you can speak clearly. Step 2. The 5-minute ramping rule. Never shock your heart. Before you lift a single weight or increase the speed on your stationary bike, you must spend a minimum of 5 minutes doing gentle, rhythmic movement. Walk slowly, do some light arm circles, or pedal with 0 resistance. This 5-minute period gives your body time to produce that crucial nitric oxide, smoothly dilating your arteries and preparing your cardiovascular system for the increased blood flow. Step 3. The continuous breathing protocol. As we discussed in depth, holding your breath is a death sentence for your blood vessels. You must train yourself to breathe continuously during exertion. A good rule of thumb is to blow out through pursed lips, like you are blowing out a candle during the hardest part of the movement. If you are standing up from a chair, blow out as you stand. If you are lifting a grocery bag, blow out as you lift. If you find yourself holding your breath, stop the activity immediately. Step 4. The cool down mandate. Just as you cannot go from 0 to 60, you cannot go from 60 to 0. If you are walking briskly and you suddenly stop dead in your tracks and sit down, your muscles stop pumping blood back to your heart, but your blood vessels are still wide open. Your blood pressure can plummet, causing you to pass out and suffer a devastating fall. Always spend 3 to 5 minutes walking slowly to let your heart rate gracefully return to its resting state. Your body is designed to move, and your heart desperately needs the conditioning that safe exercise provides. But you must respect the physical changes that occur as you age. Your arteries demand smooth, continuous, and breathing-focused movement. They cannot withstand sudden, violent spikes in pressure or the strangulation of sustained isometric holds. I strongly encourage you to share this video. Send it to your spouse, email it to your friends at the gym, or share it with your family members. Millions of seniors are unknowingly putting their lives at risk every single day by holding their breath on a leg press machine or aggressively shoveling a snowy driveway. You have the power to educate them and potentially save them from a catastrophic, preventable heart attack. If you found this deep dive into exercise physiology valuable, and you want to continue learning how to fiercely protect your health as you age, please hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell. My goal is to decode the complex medical science and bring you the unvarnished truth every single week so you can make the safest decisions for your future. Before you close this video, please leave a comment down below. Tell me, what is your favorite way to stay active during the week? And have you ever felt dizzy or lightheaded while pushing yourself in a workout? I read as many comments as I can, and your real-world experiences help me design the precise guidance this community needs. Use the information I have shared today as a starting point for a conversation with your healthcare team, not as a replacement for them. Ask your doctor specifically which exercises are safe for your unique cardiovascular profile. Thank you for your time today. Take care of your heart. It is the only one you have got, and I will see you in the next video.